Hello, everybody. Welcome to Terrace Talk. Norwich City are back. The international break is over. We can look forward to Championship football once again. Of course, Norwich travel to Middlesbrough. Both teams in a pretty good vein of form at the moment, you have to say. So this one potentially could be a very mouth-watering clash. I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Seaman, Norwich City fan, and Chris Cassidy of Boropolis, which is a Middlesbrough fan site. Sam, let's start with you. How have you found this international break? I guess the highlight from a Norwich City perspective is probably Kenny McLean's Scotland qualification.
Yeah, I was a bag of nerves when he stepped up for that penalty. I was just thinking, what's he going to be like for Norwich for the rest of the season if he's responsible for for them losing the shootout? But I was relieved when he scored, and I didn't really care after that. So yeah, it was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was doing the report for our websites and newspaper and whatnot. I think that copy changed about 6 times probably in the last 10 minutes of that and the Northern Ireland game combined. But no, it was good for Kenny, who I think might have got an upgrade on the Mayor of Norwich status that he's acquired after his City Hall antics. Chris, how about you? How have you found this international break? I always find they drag on a little bit, but good news for Middlesbrough, I guess, or depends, I guess, on your outlook of this award. Neil Warnock, Manager of the Month, beating a certain Daniel Farke. You must be pretty pleased with that. I think it's 10 unbeaten for Boro now, isn't it?
Yeah, 10 unbeaten. And like you say, obviously, I think quite a lot of fans were hoping that he wouldn't get it previously. It's been a bit of a curse. So I woke up this morning seeing the news and obviously I was happy, but then, you're never too sure of that award.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, are you surprised Daniel Farke didn't win it? Quite glad that Daniel Farke didn't win it?
I've not really. I wasn't even aware of that, to be honest. But I think to start off with, I was a bit surprised because obviously, I think we're top of the form table at the moment. So I just thought based off that. But then when you look at the two squads, I think probably you could give it to Warnock that he's probably got more out of what he's got than what Farke has.
Absolutely. Chris, that seems well, thanks, Sam. That seems a nice segue into speaking about Neil Warnock. He's obviously come into Middlesbrough. He's 70 plus years of age now, plenty of Championship experience, and he seems to be doing it again at Middlesbrough. Although it seems to be quite a different management style we're seeing to him, maybe than we have in the past.
Yeah, like you say, obviously he's come in. I think sort of the well-known thing now is he always says it's going to be his last job, and then he seems to get one more every time. And obviously he kept us up last season, and this season it's sort of been a little bit of a shock that we've started so well. Obviously, Warnock's got a great record in the Championship, but in the sort of with respect, we don't really have a great squad, and what he's done is pretty much unbelievable. Obviously, he keeps on mentioning in his press conferences, our squad's so thin, probably the complete opposite to you guys. But yeah, our squad's so thin, and to go 10 unbeaten against, obviously, we've actually played, I think it's 4 of the top 6 as well. So to get them results against those teams has been fantastic.
Absolutely. I think, if I'm right in saying that Norwich and Middlesbrough are the only teams in the division at the moment who have a 2 points per game record, which is in current form anyway, or I think it's the last 8 games, which is promotion form essentially, isn't it? And as you say there, Chris, it's a different squad to maybe what he's had at Cardiff and all of the other jobs before that. I'll be here all night if we list all of the jobs he's had. But in terms of it being, like you say, quite a thin squad, but also quite a young squad, it's full of a lot of young talent.
Yeah, he talks about the average age quite a lot. Obviously you'll know him very well. Jonny Nelson's pretty much our senior player now, and apart from that, there's a few sort of 27, 28-year-olds, but the rest are sort of the earlier sides of 20 and some even below that. We've got a few exciting young players. Obviously, we've got Patrick Roberts on loan as well, who was also at Norwich. And he hasn't actually featured as much as probably a lot of fans would have hoped for. But yeah, like you say, it's a young squad. And despite Warnock having a bit of a reputation for having boring football or sort of basic football, we've been playing some really good stuff.
Yeah, I've heard one podcast say that if Pep Guardiola was playing the sort of football Neil Warnock was at Middlesbrough, then maybe the reviews would be a bit more generous.
Yeah.
Sam, let's come to you and speak a little bit about Norwich. It's October was, as we kind of said, despite a defeat from Derby, a pretty positive month for Norwich. 7 unbeaten, they sit third in the table. Things suddenly look a lot more rosy for Daniel Farke and his side.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people are feeling very positive. I think quite a lot of people still think we've got another gear to kick into. I would say it's not really that we're waiting to do that yet. I think you saw that against Bristol actually, and I think what it looks like is that the team has a bit of a knack to actually just to be stepping up to the level of the opposition that they're playing against, which is, I think, really encouraging.
Absolutely. Let's speak about that win against Swansea City. It was a really pivotal win for a lot of reasons. Swansea were in a really good vein of form, but like you said there, they weren't necessarily the best team throughout periods of that game. They kind of had to manage it a little bit, and in the end, it was a very brave substitution from Daniel Farke that perhaps was the reason that Norwich City ended up winning the game.
Yeah, a little bit of genius from him actually. I was very confused when I saw him making those subs, but I think he explained it after the game, the sort of tactical thinking behind it, and it was on another level of sort of his thinking, especially to put on 2 players who have barely played this season, and they obviously made the difference. I think Josh Martin a bit more tactically and Ballymumba a bit more on the ball. But yeah, it was really encouraging and really clever from Farke. I don't think anybody would have been able to work out what he was doing at the time, but yeah, it worked out well.
And again, we're talking about bravery of young players, aren't we? I mean, to turn around to a bench and to have Alex Tettey, Jordan Hugill, Mario Vrancic was also on the bench, Adam Ida, who is young but has been exposed to Championship football this year, and decide to bring on 2 players who have a combined total of 4 Championship minutes between them in a game of that magnitude. He does deserve credit, especially when he has been criticised by some people for the nature of his substitutions.
Yeah, yeah, just like what you said, really. When he brought them on, I remember thinking, we got Vrancic, Hugill, and Ida on the bench. 2 of those aren't going to be coming on, and I was thinking that's going to be a big problem if we don't win this game. It's going to be a big problem for Farke to put an arm around whatever 2 of those miss out. I think in the end, none of them ended up coming on, but the fact that we won the game was all that really mattered. So I think those 3 will be happy, and yeah, it's rosy all round, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem like the group is a bit more together these days than perhaps it was after Project Restart. Chris, let's come to you on Middlesbrough's recent results: a 0-0 draw with Brentford, a 0-0 draw with Blackburn. How do you kind of review this stage of the season? You said there in terms of the calibre of opposition that Middlesbrough are playing. Are they standing up to those tests quite nicely? Obviously, Norwich to come. There's been a few teams that have played Norwich recently that have kind of had that double header with Brentford and then Norwich, and it seems to be quite a good test for size to kind of see where they are at the moment.
Yeah, like you say, obviously the Brentford and the Blackburn games, I'd argue that we probably should have won both. We more than matched them in every area, and we had chances in both games. Definitely the Blackburn game, we had so many chances to win the game, and how we didn't, I'm not quite sure. But like you say, we've played 4 out of the top 6 currently now, and only Watford have beat us, which again you could argue we probably could have got a point from. But yeah, we're just at the moment it seems to be whatever anyone throws at us, we match and we give them a good game regardless.
And that's quite a quiet thing, isn't it, about Middlesbrough this season? The fact they've only lost 1 game, which is really interesting. Okay, you've drawn 6, and again maybe it sort of points towards what Neil Warnock does very well in terms of making teams very difficult to beat. It certainly looks like on paper, and obviously you'll have more of an insight on this than me, that although we're sort of talking about the young players in the Finn squad, fundamentally what Neil Warnock has done is made Middlesbrough very hard to beat.
Yeah, you're right. We're much, obviously, last year wasn't a great season for us, and since he's come in, even towards the back end of last season, we were still shipping goals, but then this season it's all been changed. I think the stat is we've only conceded 1 goal from open play, in the league this season, and it's up there with some unbelievable teams sort of in the world. PSG, I think I've seen. But yeah, anyway, we've just we do struggle to score. That is probably our weakness. You know, the games we've won, it's been 2-1 or 1-0. But defensively, we just look solid, and we haven't been, you know, letting teams really dominate us. It's always been sort of more us not scoring rather than them, you know, getting lucky blocks or things like that. And you know, like I said previously, we've just been given as good as we've got, really.
Sam, you've suggested that Norwich City perhaps have another gear to go through or to go up into. Is that what you're looking at or for during the next sort of run of games, starting with Middlesbrough, a more fluid, cohesive performance, or ultimately are we still in the nature that Norwich City will take results over performances at the moment?
Well, I think you take results over performances anytime, really. I think there's a lot of people concentrating on it, and there's a lot of negativity around our performances. But I think I think it's not necessarily that this approach isn't going to work or that we need to find another level. I think it's different to what we're used to with Farke, but I think the players are taking more risks, so we probably lose the ball more often. There's a lot more frustration watching it as a fan. But I think, and I wrote about it, I think people aren't necessarily, you know, if Buendia tries an unbelievable pass 10 times and it comes off twice, that's 2 great opportunities for us to score a goal. But it does get frustrating watching us lose the ball 8 times in the final third or whatever. So I don't think it's necessarily that our performances aren't quite there yet. It's just probably a different approach. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think a key to that is the variation that we've seen? I kind of think back to the Rotherham game at this, or after the other international break that we saw. That was a very different sort of style of Norwich City lineup to perhaps the one they deployed against Birmingham and Wycombe as well. Is it the case that almost they've got too much quality in these matches for teams, regardless of the way they set up against them?
Yeah, maybe. And well, that's the advantage you have when you have the sort of transfer window that we had. And I'm sure if it's not going well on Saturday, I'm sure we'll have, you know, we've got probably Hugo to come off the bench, Ida, Vrancic. So eventually the quality does tell. I think that's been the difference in most of our wins this season, like the Rotherham one, like you said.
And obviously before this game, it looks like EFL clubs are going to have a vote on whether or not to reintroduce the 5 substitutes rule, which of course Daniel Farke has been calling for, and you have to say would massively benefit Norwich City with both the depth and quality they have in their squad. I'm not sure if Wycombe Wanderers and teams of that ilk are necessarily as pleased about that, but we'll see if it gets voted through. It's happening sort of or after we're recording this, so let's see. Chris, before we talk about the game generally, I want to speak a little bit about Middlesbrough's life after Premier League relegation, because they're kind of, and I mean this with a lot of respect, they're kind of a sign of maybe how to get things a little bit wrong after relegation, and perhaps how difficult it is to do what Norwich City are trying to do at the moment, which is to get promoted again at the first attempt, essentially.
Yeah, obviously we got relegated from the Premier League and brought Gary Monk in, who ironically has obviously just been sacked from Sheffield Wednesday.
People need to stop giving him jobs, don't they?
Well, yeah, I was just about to say, I'm sure there'll be plenty of happy Middlesbrough fans that he's been sacked yet again. But like I say, we brought Gary Monk in and spent an awful lot of money in the Championship, and that year I think everyone just assumed we would go up with Wolves, and obviously the way it unfolded, there was a lot of off the pitch things to do with Monk and transfers that came out later on, and what we should have done is probably similar to your approach, where, you know, I've always looked at Norwich as a team that, since Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber come in, do the transfer business properly and don't sort of throw money at it and just hope things happen. And obviously since then, Pulis come in, which was another short-term appointment, and yeah, he got us in and around the playoffs, but the football was terrible, and it never really felt like we were going to get promoted. And then obviously last season, Jonathan Woodgate come in, and the less said about that, the better. I mean, we become a bit of a laughing stock last season. And yeah, like I say, it wasn't a good season at all. And up until the point, obviously, where Neil Warnock come in, I thought it was going to be another relegation, if I'm totally honest.
Yeah, Neil. I think everyone saw Neil Warnock get appointed as Middlesbrough manager, and sort of sat back and go, well, that's them staying up then. He kind of has that impact, doesn't he? But in terms of the managerial appointments you've kind of listed there, Gary Monk, Tony Pulis, Jonathan Woodgate, and then Neil Warnock, it does feel like this is a club that is maybe wrestling a little bit with the direction it wants to go in. Does it want to play pragmatic or attractive football? Is that kind of I don't know, has there been a little bit of an identity crisis after relegation, do you think, at Middlesbrough? Maybe a club trying to find out exactly where it wants to go and who it wants to be in terms of long term?
I think you're absolutely right. Obviously, with Monk, he was sort of, after the job he'd done at Leeds, he was sort of deemed as this exciting young manager. And obviously that went wrong. And then Steve Gibson quickly scrambled and thought, well, I've spent this amount of money, we need a quick fix. Pulis come in, as you say, and it didn't really work out. And then we went back to square one with Woodgate, and there was sort of an outpour of PR spin that it was going to be, the local lad, and he'd worked in the academy and knew all the young players, and it was start of something fresh. And obviously it didn't quite unfold like that. It was a very disappointing reign as manager, probably up there with the worst we've had. And then, like you say, again, it's back to the tried and tested, and Warnock's coming. And as much as, yes, he is 70 years old and he's been there and done it, I think it got to the stage last season where Middlesbrough fans just wanted a bit of hope, because it like I say, it looked like it was a team that was going to get relegated, 2 years after getting relegated from the Premier League and spending all that money. And yeah, I think identity crisis is spot on, really. A lot of fans have been crying out for years to go with a more sort of Norwich and Brentford-like approach, and using scouting and recruitment and having a director of football as a base of something to build off. And we've just never really got that. But at least now with Warnock, there's a bit of hope building again, and you can sort of sense that around Middlesbrough.
That's really interesting, Sam. Does listening to that sort of lay out the I guess the difficulty of what Norwich City are trying to do this season in terms of bounce back at the first attempt? Because the reality behind sort of those figures is it's more likely that Norwich City stay in the Championship for another season than go up, if you're judging it on the last decade or so.
Yeah, I think I was surprised. I think a lot of Norwich fans were surprised at the start of the season when you actually look at the stats of how easy it is to come back up automatically. And it was worrying. I think the recruitment, we've probably gone halfway between sort of what we did last time we got promoted and what Middlesbrough did when they got relegated. I think maybe I would question if the right approach was to do that, or if we could have done that in the Premier League. I mean, I know with everything that's happened since, it's obviously looking like what we did was quite smart, but you just wonder, with us investing the amount that we did now, if we could have done that at a better point in terms of staying in the Premier League rather than trying to bounce back when it actually looks so hard. And you look at teams like Middlesbrough and you think, why? It's difficult to understand the rationale behind putting your eggs in that basket when we already got ourselves up and we didn't make that investment at that point.
Absolutely. What have you made of the new recruits? We're going to speak about Ben Gibson and Jordan Hugill specifically in a moment. I'll throw their names at Chris, but overall the sort of impacts they've had generally. How do you sort of assess the recruitment at this stage of the season? It's always a dangerous thing to do, I know, but those additions that Norwich City have added on the whole look to have significantly strengthened them. Yeah,
there's been a lot that I've been really impressed with. I think Sorensen, even though he's not really played in his proper position yet, has really impressed me. Quintilla as well. I know you said we'll come on to Hugo, but I've probably been most disappointed with him. I think he's still we're still waiting for him to sort of find his role in the team. But most of them I'm really pleased. I think Ballymumba, especially, I watched him in that Luton Cup game, and I was hoping he was going to be more involved than he has been so far. So I was really pleased that he got a chance to show what he's about, and he really did show he did show what he was about when he came on against Swansea. So yeah, so far I'm really pleased with most of them. I think Placheta is maybe the one I'm still sort of yet to decide about. I can really see the promising aspects to him and why they've signed him, but he's not quite there yet. So that's the one I'm a little bit worried about. But apart from that, I've been really pleased with most of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of rawness to Placheta's game, isn't there? It was good to see him put in a really good performance for Poland against the Ukraine. I watched that game actually, and I'm not sure if you can class it as an assist if a cross hits the post and the player taps it in afterwards, but we'll give it to him. Of course, he got to stay with the Poland team, so that's good news. Chris, as Sam alluded to, as I alluded to as well, there's a Middlesbrough core to this Norwich City side at the moment. Ben Gibson, Jordan Hugill. When you hear those names, what are your thoughts? I guess Ben Gibson in particular is someone that Middlesbrough fans look at with real fondness.
Yeah, Ben Gibson, obviously, he's a local lad. He was part of the promotion winning team and that sort of the few Karanka years, which has been arguably our most successful over the past few years. And, Ben Gibson, he got his move to Burnley, and a lot of Middlesbrough fans wished him well, and then for whatever reason it just didn't work out at all. And since then he's been linked probably every transfer window with a loan move back, and at the back end of last season he was still doing training with us. So I think the belief probably going into this summer was there's a real chance that we could get him back on loan. Obviously that didn't pan out the way we'd all hoped, but his move to Norwich was probably something that was quite it's hard to put into words. Middlesbrough, I'll put it this way: Middlesbrough fans weren't as annoyed as say he'd gone to other teams in the Championship. Norwich are a good club and have a real chance of getting promoted this season. So I think the chance of him to play and sort of get back to his best is what Middlesbrough fans will have hoped for, obviously, if he wasn't going to come back to Middlesbrough. And then Jordan Hugill's an interesting one. Again, a local lad, come back on loan under Pulis. And I think the problem that I saw personally was he was almost trying too hard. I think the local lad tag that he had on his head almost made him do things that he probably wouldn't have playing for another club, diving into tackles. And there was a bit of a time during that season I remember where he was just on the floor a lot in games, diving and trying to win penalties and things like that. And don't get me wrong, he is a handful up front. I think he scored 6 goals for us in the league that season, and it wasn't a bad return considering the lack of goals we scored. But yeah, I'm again happy to see him doing all right. I'm not sure about the price tag that obviously you paid for him, and I've seen that he hasn't really been playing an awful lot. But yeah, Jordan Hugill again, haven't really got anything too bad to say about him.
Let's speak about on the flip side, Jonny Nelson. You referenced him earlier in terms of being one of Middlesbrough's more senior players. He obviously enjoyed a really good time with Norwich City on the whole. Really popular character down at Carrow Road. Has he improved, I guess, under Neil Warnock? Have you seen a marked improvement in terms of his game? He seems to be someone who, certainly for Norwich at least, was fairly consistent in terms of the quality of his performances. But I think a few Norwich fans were shocked to see him, as he has done. I don't know if it was under Pulis or Woodgate. I'm sure you'll be able to step in, play as a centre-back and a full-back and all over the place, really. When to Norwich fans, he seemed a central midfielder. Has he moved back there under Warnock now?
Yeah, to be honest, I've had to eat my words a little bit on Jonny Nelson, because I remember the first season, especially under Monk, when he come in and obviously got these brilliant reviews from Norwich fans and everywhere else he had been. And it just didn't seem to click for him for whatever reason. You know, obviously he'd been at Norwich for quite a long time, and I don't know if it was just a case of him settling in, but it just couldn't seem to click. And then over the past sort of since Pulis come in, it slowly got better. And then last year, under Woodgate, as you say, he was moved back to centre half because of really just an injury crisis, and one player of the season playing in defence. And then ever since then, he really is now a fan favourite. You know, he's literally probably played in every position on the pitch, barring in goal, which I'm sure he'd probably give a good go if he was given the chance. But yeah, as you say, since Warnock's come in, he's moved back into that sort of traditional role that Norwich fans are probably more used to him playing in midfield, sort of. Maybe he's a little bit more defensive orientated, and he's been outstanding this season. Every game it's a 7 or an 8 from him. He's, you know, obviously a massive fan favourite now.
Yeah, and he certainly enjoyed a very good spell with Norwich City. Sam, let's look ahead to this game. It's going to be a very difficult game for Norwich City. They're going to come across a Neil Warnock side, which is a difficult proposition, I think, for any club at any stage in the season. If you're Daniel Farke, how do you look to approach this one? Is it just kind of hoping that you can play through them as they have tried to done against teams that have maybe tried to set up fairly defensively against them so far this season?
I think it's probably just give it to Buendia and see what he can do, to be honest. I think, well, there's definitely not going to be a lot of goals in it. Although I said there would be about Swansea and then there was 1-0. But I think, well, it's just the same story really, isn't it? There's a lot of teams just sitting back against us. The thing that worries me is the Millwall game. I think that was the only time we've come up against a real quality side that decided to do that, and obviously we couldn't find a goal. I wonder if Hugo will have a bit of a part to play in it. If we can use the wide areas a bit better, but then a low block against a player. I would say our only real proper winger that's going to get balls in is probably Pacheta. And against a low block, I don't see him being able to properly use his pace. Hopefully, Quintilla will be back, and that'll give us definitely a different dimension. But in terms of, I don't see Hugo starting, and for the first 65 minutes or whatever, I definitely don't see Pukki getting his head on the end of crosses ahead of the Middlesbrough defence. So I think Middlesbrough's setup actually does worry me a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see how Farke tries to combat it.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of set pieces, and Daniel Farke has obviously been very vocal in how Norwich haven't conceded from a set piece, unless you're including Wayne Rooney's free kick. So up to you. I kind of take it when he says that to mean corners, because obviously that was a massive issue in the Premier League last year. Hasn't necessarily been as much of an issue this year, but you expect that to maybe be an area where they're tested.
Yeah, probably. Well, that's probably. I haven't watched too much of Middlesbrough, but I'd imagine that's where a lot of their sort of creativity and where their chances come from. I still don't think we're quite at it attacking wise, and given Middlesbrough have only conceded 1 in open play, as Chris said earlier, I would worry about that because I don't really see us as much of a threat from that sort of situation. But defensively, I think that we've definitely improved on that a lot, and that's probably down to signing Gibson. So I wouldn't worry about that too much from a defensive point of view, but I would attack wise.
Interesting. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question that we always ask our opposition fans when they come on. I ask you to put on Daniel Farke's lovely coat and talk us through how, if you were him, you would approach this game, and which areas you'd look to exploit if you were him ahead of this weekend's game.
I think obviously it's well known how much quality you have going forward. You know, Emi Buendia is a player that the whole of the league and probably the Premier League knows how good he is on the ball and how creative he can be. And you know, from open play, we haven't conceded a lot of goals, as I mentioned. It really is a difficult one because we've conceded such few goals. Set pieces, I would say, we're quite strong with. Probably pace, I think, is one issue that maybe we lack a little bit. A main concern for me is that Paddy McNair went off injured for Ireland last night, and he's also, as I mentioned, with Howson probably being up there with the best players this season. So Paddy McNair in defence, if he is injured, it'll probably be Grant Hall that plays, and he's just come back from an injury, and he really does struggle with players in behind and pace and things like that. So if Paddy McNair isn't playing, definitely passes in behind, creativity from Buendia, as I mentioned, and the pace aspect. Obviously, you said about Placheta as well, who's very quick from what I've heard. But yeah, probably pace, I would say.
Interesting. Chris, finally, how do you see this game going? And of course, the dreaded score prediction, I'm afraid. What are you going for in terms of a scoreline?
I thought about this earlier, and I initially said 1-1. And then I did see that Norwich are having a little bit of an injury crisis currently. Is that correct?
There's always an injury crisis at Norwich City, my friend.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of injuries, and then I thought, well, maybe we can nick another win. And then Neil Warnock got manager of the month, so it could be 5-0 to Norwich, that award. But I think overall I'll go, and I would be happy with a 1-1 draw. I think Norwich are a really good side, and obviously they'll be there or thereabouts this season. So yeah, 1-1 would do me now probably.
Interesting, Sam. Same question for you. How do you see this game going, and what's your score prediction? I'm hoping you're going to be a bit more optimistic from a Norwich sense than perhaps some of the Norwich fans we've had on so far this season.
I was going to go with a boring 1-1 as well, actually. I don't see there being a lot of goals. I think Middlesbrough's start to the season makes me think that we're probably going to concede, but it doesn't look like they're able to score more than 2 in a game. So I don't see us scoring more than 1. I don't see them scoring more than 1, but I see both teams probably conceding. So that's why I'd go for that. I don't think it's going to be a great game. But yeah, 1-1 is what I'd go for as well.
Interesting. You're both sitting on the fence. I'm not sure if I'll join you or not. I think you probably both call it right. I think it will be a tight game, but we shall see. Chris, Sam, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure you head over to pinken.com, of course, for all the latest Norwich City news and views. Paddy and Dave will be at the Riverside Stadium for this one. So, of course, pinken.com to follow the action, get the reaction from Daniel Farker. And yeah, I hope you're all staying safe and well. These are obviously very difficult times, but hopefully Norwich City can give you guys some light relief. Not Chris, obviously, but I'm sure his relief will come in weeks to come. Fingers crossed for another good performance. Fingers crossed for another good result. And we'll see you again very, very soon.